Hi, everyone. I'm Amie Clark with the Senior List, and today I'm here with Nurse Cynthia.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about assisted living. Mainly, what is assisted living, what to expect in assisted living. Cynthia has worked in assisted living and with older adults for the majority of her career, so she is an expert at this topic and all the things surrounding assisted living. So we're going to pick her brain and she's going to spout out a bunch of knowledge. So hope you're ready.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
So the very first question, let's just, get it out of the way. Tell us what assisted living is and what type of person is appropriate for assisted living.
Okay. Yeah. So assisted living is a care option for older adults that need assistance with activities of daily living, things like bathing, medication management, mobility, toileting, and it varies from individual to individual as to what that looks like from community to community, and then as far as what services folks need at any given point in their life. And so, yeah, it's very personal. It's very individual, but it is for folks generally that are older adults that are needing some help and supervision and safety.
Yeah. And does someone have to be an older adult or a senior to live in assisted living?
Good question. So not necessarily. I did some research on this, and I've personally worked with individuals that were in their 40s and 50s in assisted living, but they had some specific care needs for their activities of daily living. Typically, though, depending on the community, you might find a community that's 55 or older. And then I think that you can see folks down into even 18. I've never experienced that, but from what I've read, there can be younger adults. It's just unusual, but ages vary. Yeah. Typically, though, the age is going to be beyond retirement.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about assisted living. What does someone's room look like, or in many cases, an apartment? Tell us about that and how much independence a person might have or not in assisted living.
So assisted living, it should be very personal and very individual, and it does vary from person to person. There are very small apartments. There are studios. There's usually one bedroom, and most communities will offer 2 bedrooms, even a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. So the apartment size can definitely vary. It's supposed to be a home-like environment. It's supposed to be your home. So apartments should look and feel like you would want your home to look and feel. So individually decorated by the person that moves in. Some facilities or communities will let you paint the walls and you can hang your own art. And then what goes on inside your apartment and what services you receive is per your choice, per your preference. What do you need? You can have a very independent lifestyle, very private lifestyle at an assisted living facility where your door's closed, your door's locked, and you only get assistance if you call for it or if you've scheduled it. And then you can have hands-on morning, noon, and night assistance with dressing, toileting, transfers, mobility. So you do see a variety of types of care and folks with different levels of independence in assisted living. And I think a lot of folks think that assisted living, they might get a visual of something more like a nursing home, but it's not. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we probably should remind our visitors about is that both Cynthia and I reside in Oregon, and there are parts of the country that probably where assisted living looks a little different than what it looks like here in Oregon. So my disclaimer is that everything we're talking about, we're trying to talk about it in a very general sense, but keep in mind that these things can look different depending on your geography. So,
yes.
So when a person is looking for assisted living, and again, depending on your geography, there may be a whole bunch of options to choose from.
True.
Or there may be one. So talk to us a little bit about, let's pretend that a person has some options. What kinds of things are important for the family and for the person who's moving in? Hopefully they're as much of a part of this process as anyone.
Yes.
Because this will be their home. But tell us about some of the things people need to think about when they're looking at these communities. A lot of them can be very posh and pretty, and there's very much a sales aspect to assisted living. So give us some insider knowledge about what to look for and things that people should be paying attention to.
Yes, I like that question because I think that I take it from a little bit of a different view.
Yeah.
You definitely want a community that you've done some research on, that is well reviewed, well recommended, that looks right, that feels right. And another video might be just looking into state surveys and how do you know if you have a good facility and a safe facility?
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
That's a good one. That's a big one.
Yeah.
But I think for me, really one of the most important things, especially when you have options, is to really look at the individual that you're finding a home for and a community for, whether it's your spouse or your parent. And you really want to match that community to their personality. And I think that is something that gets overlooked, or people don't really think about that aspect when looking for an assisted living community, but it's really important. And an example of that would be if your loved one is very quiet and reserved and shy, very private, they like to spend a lot of their time alone, maybe in their apartment, reading. They might not be somebody that's really looking for all those extra bells and whistles and activities and amenities and things like that. It would be important to pick a community for them that's going to really embrace that side of their personality. And I would worry about someone moving into a really large facility when that's kind of their baseline personality, because sometimes those folks can fall through the cracks. And I worked in a building for many years that was close to 100 residents, and I saw that firsthand.
I bet.
Quite often, where folks would come in and tour our community, and it's beautiful. It has all the amenities, very fancy, and then they're finding a community for somebody who really isn't attracted to all those things. And they move in, and they're happy, well cared for, but they tend to fall through the cracks because they're not making their needs known. They're not out and about. They're not being seen. They're maybe on the second floor at the end of the hall, and they're doing their own thing and they're content. But when they start to have health concerns, or even emotional concerns, they tend to be more private, and in a large facility, their needs might not be identified as quickly and as easily. And so I think when people are very outgoing, very social, they're out of their apartment most of their day, and they're in a large community and they're accessing all of the amenities, they do really well in really big facilities. But really just matching that facility to how your loved one has lived their life. If they've been a very quiet, private person, that's not likely to change, and putting them in a really large facility with a lot of things going on can be overwhelming for them and a lot to process. And I think oftentimes we tend to walk into the larger communities and they look beautiful and they have all these wonderful options, and we want that for our loved one, for our parents. And so we think that might be the best thing for them. But oftentimes you really just need to kind of tune into where your loved one is at this point in their life and what their history has been, and really look for a community that matches who they are.
Yeah.
Because there's tons of options.
There is. And just to reiterate your point, and I think about this because it's the experience we had with my grandmother. She lived in a big, beautiful facility. And initially she did take advantage of the activities. She was social. She's still social, but she participated, and those things were really good for her. But there also came a time where, because it was such a large facility, the little subtle changes that were happening to her physically and cognitively were missed.
Yes.
And there's a lot of factors that could go into something like that, whether it's staffing, whether it's just simply, who has eyes on her and what's going on with her. But I do think that's just such an important piece that people are easily overwhelmed by initially in that search. And usually that search, from my experience, is in a moment of crisis.
Yes, absolutely.
People generally don't have the luxury of time to see everything they want to see and take their time and simmer on it and really think about those things. So another piece that I always feel important to pound home to people is do this, go through this process, even if it's not time to move.
Yes.
Start the search sooner than later, because in that moment of crisis, your options are incredibly limited. You may not get anything close to what you want, which then creates problems on down the road.
It does. And really try to visualize where your loved one is at that time and how you picture them in that community. Because I know we always want what looks best, and excellent care can be provided in a small, older community that's quieter, maybe it's 20 years old or 30 years old and it doesn't look as fancy, but that might be what feels most comfortable to your loved one. I know a lot of older adults that have come into larger communities and they've actually verbalized, this is just too much. They don't see themselves there. And so they don't feel comfortable there. And then that impacts, whether or not their needs are getting met and the services that they're accessing. And so I think that when you look at your loved one and they're very, bright and outgoing, they could even have some cognitive issues, but they like to be out. They like to sit out of their apartment. They like to go over to the exercise class. They like to participate in all the activities. Those folks can be very successful in a really large community, even if they have some cognitive deficits. It's more their personality. And so I think that that's something that we really need to consider is our loved one's personality and kind of their vibe, what their life was like and how they like to live every day, and really embrace that instead of trying to push them into something different at this point in their life. So,
okay. Thank you for that. That's just such a good reminder for people. Let's talk a little bit about the cost of assisted living. And again, we're going to talk about this in general terms, since it may not apply to everybody, and every facility structures their pricing differently. But I think what's important for people to understand is that the cost can change. It most likely will over time, whether that's because of a cost of living increase that is across the board, regardless of your needs, or if a loved one starts having some changes and needs more care. So let's talk a little bit about how cost works in assisted living, the base rate, and then
where it goes from there. Yes. So typically in assisted living, it's similar to renting an apartment anywhere. There is a base rent. And so it depends on the size of your apartment typically. So a studio, 1 bedroom, lots of times there'll be 2-bedroom options, larger studios, smaller studios. And so generally the base rent is a reflection of your apartment and the apartment size. And so that's going to vary typically from community to community. They do like to stay competitive within their size and similar communities. So you don't see a lot of difference in the base rent If you're looking at a smaller, older community, more than likely the base rent's going to be similar or very close to another facility that's similar to that. So, but beyond your base rent, really where assisted living catches some people by surprise is when they start paying for care. And so care is additional beyond your rent. And care can be billed in different ways depending on the community, depending on the company that you're working with. Generally, you're going to see two types of systems, and one is more of like an a la carte system, which means you're just paying for the care that you need. Most communities have basic services are included with my rent.
Yeah.
Because there can be weekly laundry, weekly housekeeping, of course, maintenance, your activities, things like that. And so that might vary a little bit from community to community, but it's good to know that there are some basic services usually that are included with your rent. And then anything that you're needing help with beyond that is usually an add-on cost. So if you're looking at an a la carte system, if you want to have an extra shower every week, or you want to have a shower every week, you are just purchasing a weekly shower. And if you need a shower and some medication management, you're purchasing those two services. So it's very specific to the service that you need, and that's all that you're paying for. A lot of other communities will bill in increments or levels, and that's a very common term that we hear out in the assisted living world is what level are you at, or level of care. And that's really based on grouping care together. And so they might offer a variety of services, 2 or 3 different services in a level 1. And that's going to have a flat rate. So it might be $500 if you're at a level 1, and if you're at a level 1, you get a weekly shower and maybe some dressing assistance. And then it'll go up to a level 2. Maybe you have 3 or 4 or 5 services that are added in there, and then a level 3 and a level 4. It goes on. So it gets more expensive as you start to add care. A la carte type services can be wonderful for folks that are very independent and only need very specific assistance with very specific things.
Or only need it every once in a while.
Only need it every once in a while, yeah. So it can be very cost effective when you are purchasing individual services though. And let's say you have an event, maybe you go out to the hospital, you come back, you're not at your baseline. And you're needing a lot of extra TLC. You're needing maybe escorts to meals, dressing assistance, showering, maybe some medication management. When you're paying for all of those services individually, it can add up quickly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so that's where some folks will find that a level system can be a little bit more beneficial because it's kind of grouping care together with a flat rate.
There's more baked into the level of care. Yeah. So theoretically, on one day you could be a very low level 1, and the next day be a very high level 1.
Correct. Yes, and your cost isn't going to fluctuate within that. Yeah. And it can seem a little overwhelming understanding. I know for me it can when I'm learning about a new community and how they charge for services, but really asking a lot of questions until you feel like you can understand that comfortably. Certainly people that work in the assisted living communities, it's our job to help you understand and know what it is that you're paying for and how that works. It shouldn't be a mystery, but there's a learning curve for sure.
And if it is a mystery, let's say you're looking at a community and it is a mystery about the fees and the charges. To me, that would be a bit of a red flag because all of that information should be very transparent, very clear. You may not know initially exactly how much your loved one is going to pay, but there should be some sort of outline or fee schedule or rate schedule that the facility will give you to at least have some general idea of what to expect.
Yeah, so you can at least ballpark it yourself. and visualize what the costs will be as somebody maybe navigates through that system. And I really encourage people to ask questions and not be afraid to ask questions, because you're not expected to understand. It doesn't make sense to a lot of us. And so it shouldn't be uncomfortable or unusual when you say, I don't understand. What is a level? What is included in a level? What are some examples of a level 1? How does that fluctuate? So that you can, arm yourself with knowledge so that you can make the best decision for your loved one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great point. Ask lots of questions.
Definitely.
Do your research early. Don't wait until a crisis.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Match your community to your loved one's personality.
And not your own.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
It's not about what the adult children want to see in their own community on down the road. You really have to think about your loved one and put yourself in their shoes when going through this process.
Yes, absolutely. It's well-intended thoughts that we have for, we really want our loved ones to have the best of the best. And so it's defining what is the best for this particular person. And it's good to really ask your loved one, to have them be an active participant in this. What feels comfortable to you, Dad? What feels comfortable to you, Mom? What feels uncomfortable? Have you thought about how big of a place you want to live in? Because sometimes once you ask, somebody might say, yeah, I think I'd feel more comfortable in a smaller environment. Or, no, I've been looking forward to really getting out there and I really want to do as much as I can, So it's important to get their feedback as much as possible.
That's a great point. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Nurse Cynthia. This has been great. We're going to have lots of other videos and other topics. One of our next videos is going to be about medication management in assisted living.
It's a good one.
And what happens when a loved one can no longer stay in assisted living. So we're going to tackle some tough topics, and we hope to see you again soon.
Yes.